All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, an amazing thing happened yesterday when former Vice President Joe Biden was speaking to a virtual fundraiser organized by the co-founder of a multi-million-dollar medical device company. He inadvertently made the case against his very own electability. A rich donor among the assembled virtual crowd asked Biden if he might be able to win over the president's base of voters, to which Biden reportedly laughed and replied that, quote, he probably couldn't. Biden told the crowd of the Trump base that, quote, they really support the notion that, Mexicans are rapists and Muslims are bad, dividing this nation based on ethnicity and race. So there we go. 7 months to election day, and Biden's already got his own deplorables moment, as we covered earlier today, letting Trump voters know he thinks that they're too racist and stupid to support him. That comment alone is something I could do an entire radar on. It shows exactly how most elite Democrats think of Trump voters, but it actually gets even better. Because buried in Biden's answer about why he's electable was this golden nugget where he made the case that he is electable. Biden made the case that while he couldn't get Trump's base, that his own base consisted of, quote, white working class, high school educated people. Of this demographic, he said, quote, they don't want to vote for Trump. They're looking for an alternative. And I hope to God I can provide that alternative. I really mean it. I think there's a chance. There's just one problem that rivals already know about, and that is that what Biden just said is a complete fantasy. Joe Biden may impart a Scranton aesthetic, but the truth is that he's been MBNA Joe for far longer. Acela Joe is a lot more like it, and that is exemplified in the explicit strategy that the Democratic Party has now embraced under his candidacy. That of hanging on to the communities that traditionally support them while getting disaffected rich suburbanites who care a lot about norms into their coalition. There's something a little too perfect about the candidate who is in reality a candidate of Wall Street and Hollywood elites and suburban voters telling a virtual group of rich donors that his base are high school educated white working class. And as we covered on the show earlier this week, this literally could not be further from the truth. Nate Cohn outlines exactly how national and battleground polls are particularly looking in absolute dead heat between Trump and Biden right now. In the battleground states in particular, Cohn writes, quote, the president begins a campaign with strong support from the white working class who powered his upset win 4 years ago. He leads amongst white voters without a college degree at 61% to 32%. He adds, quote, the results suggest that Mr. Biden, despite his reputed appeal to blue-collar workers, has made little to no progress in winning back the white voters without a college degree who supported Barack Obama in 2012 and swung to Mr. Trump in 2016. That paragraph alone completely disproves Biden's contention that both his base is high school educated white working class voters and that there are a significant number of voters in that category who are in any way fed up with Trump vis-a-vis himself. And let me also remind you of something that the Trump campaign communications director, Tim Murtaugh, told us yesterday on this show, that this is before Trump has even begun to define Joe Biden. Previously on the show, we brought you the first general election ad of the cycle from the Trump campaign. It was highlighting Biden's record on China. Well, now, America First Action, it's the major super PAC that's backing the Trump campaign, announced yesterday it would be running $10 million worth of ads against Biden in battleground states. Here is the ad running in Wisconsin markets where polls remain tight with $2.7 million behind it. Let's take a listen.
For 47 years, the D.C. elite has made one country great. Joe Biden has led the charge.
I believed in 1979 and said so, and I believe now that a rising China is a positive development.
China stole American manufacturing and hoarded our emergency stockpile.
We're not trying to slow down Chinese growth.
Now more than ever, America must stop China. And to stop China, you have to stop Joe Biden. America First Action is responsible for the content of this advertising.
I mean, you look at that ad, Crystal, and you know what this reminds me of is during the campaign when we were, I guess, the only people who knew how to read polls, is whenever people would be like, Pete Buttigieg appeals to young people because he's young. And we'd be like, no, that literally doesn't make any sense. It's like right here. Or they would be like, well, Elizabeth Warren's message is appealing across all racial groups. And we'd be like, yeah, but she has 5% support amongst African Americans.
Right.
Or they'd be like, Bernie Sanders' base is only young white people. And we'd be like, yeah, but he has the most
diverse coalition
of anyone but Joe Biden. It's one of these things where rich people and Wall Streeters look at Joe Biden and will be like, that's the guy he's Scranton Joe.
Right.
And you're like, no.
Yeah.
He's MBNA Acela Joe. And everybody who is actually working class is like, I don't know about this guy. He's not really on my... I'm not saying he doesn't have better white working class support than maybe Hillary Clinton. But if you look at that, I mean, Nate Cohn analysis, he literally says little to no progress of getting any of these people to cross. And that is before these types of ads blanket the airwaves. That ad buy I was talking about on anti-China has an entire thing called Beijing Biden. 10 million only in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Every single one of them basically along those lines. I mean, this is exactly the issue. By the way, I mean, this is why we talked so much about why Bernie Sanders would throw so much of a threat to Trump in these particular areas, is because he could credibly argue, at least on this one issue, which is, I think, the most lethal for any neoliberal who's running against Trump in these areas. You see with Biden where he's running on this Scranton aesthetic, but there's nothing to actually back it up. And it's a media narrative that, unless there are people like us who actually know how to read polls, are going to continue perpetuating because they want it to be true.
Well, it's funny because the fancy people, like Joe, wasn't their top choice.
Yeah.
Like, they liked the, intellectual trappings. Right. They love Pete, right? He was really the favorite because he, Harvard and Rhodes School, all that stuff. McKinsey, like, he had the whole thing. And they loved that and spoke their language. Like, that was their, Pete was like their identity politics, right? But they look at Joe, and they kind of look down their nose at Joe in a way, because he doesn't talk in that way. He doesn't have this like high-minded intellectualism. He doesn't quite speak that same language, but they imagine that the way that he is and the way that he does talk will appeal to this group of voters. Like, they've invented that in their head. And it is true. In the Democratic primary, not in the general electorate, but in the Democratic primary, he did much better with white working class voters than Hillary did. There was just an anti-Hillary animus, and you can lay that at the feet of many reasons. I think gender is one of them, but I think there was also, justified reasons why there was a particular animus towards her. So in the Democratic primary, it made sense. But what you're talking about in a general election is reversing a trend that has been happening over really decades at this point. I mean, every election cycle, in the Clinton era, the white working class has moved away and moved away and moved away from the Democratic Party. That's not an accident. The Bill Clinton innovation was actually to realign the Democratic Party away from the working class base, the multiracial working class base. And yes, the black and brown working class stay in the tent because the alternative of the Republican Party is so unappealing and so hostile, frankly, to them that they stay in the Democratic Party tent. But the white working class, viewing, comments like what Joe Biden said, or Hillary's deplorable comments, or Obama's, cling to their guns comments, justifiably see this as a party that has contempt for them.
Right.
You're not going to vote for a party that has contempt for you. That's just the bottom line. And yes, is there racial animus in America that fuels, political divide? Of course. And we're not erasing any of that. But part of why they've written this demographic off entirely is because of comments like what Joe Biden said, that basically, like, they're with Trump because they're racist, and there's nothing we can do about that. My issue, and this is like my fundamental issue with the Democratic Party at this point, is, look, he might be right. There may be no winning that base back at this point, but I never signed up to belong to a party that was going to pick and choose which parts of the country were worthy of their attention and support. And I feel very much, and I've really directly seen this, that most of the Democratic Party national elite really don't care to appeal to this group. They really have contempt for them. They really have disdain for them. They don't think that they are worthy of their support, and they look down their nose at them.
Yeah, they do. And, this is just as outrageous as any Mitt Romney 47% comment was. I found that incredibly outrageous. People who don't pay any taxes, it's like, no, they pay plenty of taxes and actually are much more in need of government service. And I think that's the main reason why he lost. But I think the major thing that you can look at this is it's very patronizing, the way that the media and that these rich donors look at Joe Biden and say, yeah, that's one of those guys who will appeal to these people, right?
Yeah,
like, oh, he's just like them. Like, and it's it's a looking down on the nose. It's a complete lack of empathy and understanding for the conditions of people's lives and the conditions, the international and national policy specific decisions that made it so that people would vote for Donald Trump. And again, with Biden, it just keeps coming back to this dynamic of he is doing the same thing Hillary Clinton did, the same deplorables-like comments about Trump voters, the same way of looking at things, all of the same policy baggage, and hoping and praying that Trump does something that will make it so that it's more of a protest vote against his candidacy. That is just a terrible position to be in. And I just do not think it is going to work absent a real, like there has to be a total economic collapse.
Right.
And then Trump not meeting the moment whatsoever. He needs to have like a Hoover vetoing a bill in the middle of a Great Recession type moment in order to get voted out on those grounds. And I just don't see that happening.
It's a very volatile moment. I mean, any number of things could happen that could totally reshape the dynamics. And I think we should have humility around that. But, you know, with the China ad that you played from the super PAC, and look, yes, technically they're not, you know, coordinated, but they know exactly what messaging.
Well, they saw the first ad and they're like, okay, let's do it.
Let's just jump on, right? And there's a couple things going there. I mean, first of all, yes, Trump is trying to totally shift blame to China. China deserves some blame, but he's also trying to hide his own mistakes. So there's that going on there. But this also is a way of making the trade case that was really never made effectively in the Democratic primary. And yes, Bernie Sanders' team ran some ads about Joe on trade in the industrial Midwest, you know, post Super Tuesday. But in terms of like a national concerted strategy to say, hey, this is a problem not only in terms of policy, but also in terms of electability, that never really happened, which I really do think is part of why Joe was able to do well with white working class voters in the primary. So it's making that case in particular. And it also, of course, ties into the corruption piece that also Democrats didn't want to touch. So there's a lot going on there. I think it's a pretty strong place to stand, but I'm not sure if it's like intellectually where Americans are right now and quite the hot way that TPP and NAFTA were last time around. To me, it remains to be seen.
Yeah, well, I think the smart way of doing it is, you know, overwhelmingly Americans blame China for this crisis and think China has to pay. This is a way of tying an already hot issue around jobs to the coronavirus crisis and making relevant to their lives. So I
also think it baits Democrats into saying, like, you're racist.
Well, we'll talk about that.
I mean, but I mean, that's right.
They already did.
And, and then, you know, and then the Republicans end up on the right side of people going, no, this is like a justified concern. And then, it looks like all over again.
Yeah. All right. I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.